and the programs that support them. So everything from actual building of garden boxes and organizing the tilling and cultivating of ground, of sod and that to plant the spaces, and also developing the programs like the mentorship program and workshop series. So this particular topic is actually an offshoot of the garden workshop series that I've been running every Wednesday night since about the middle of April, and they run until the middle of September. So they cover a gambit of topics from preparing soil and planting your garden right through to care and upkeep, and disease prevention, pest control, right through to East Indian cooking recipes for bread and vegetables and salsa making and all that kind of stuff. So this, I'm going to show some footage from at some point here of the creation of doing with my front yard, and because it is my front yard, I'm able to be a little bit more experimental than if I was doing this in my community garden plot. So I haven't had any complaints from any neighbors yet, even though for a little while there it looked like I was digging bunkers for World War I reenactment. But I think people have started to see what's going on, and basically what it is I've kind of named it the Earthen wave pool. So I've basically taken what was a flat front yard and turned it into a wavy front yard and added some topography. And I've done this without importing any materials. So I've done it all with materials that were already on my property, on site. And so I'll just kind of take you through just a little slideshow introduction of kind of the way that I've done this. So starting off here, we have the view of my house. So I'm sitting right about there in front of the wall to give you kind of an idea. And so what we have here is the first raised bed here, second raised bed there, and a third raised bed there. And this was the first one I planted closest to the house, the one that I was finished making earliest in the season. About the end of May, I finished landscaping and planted at the beginning of June. Whereas this one, I think I was actually building in the video that was June 10th, so it was finished and planted about June 15th. And then this one wasn't finished till sometime in the June 20th to June 30th. So these have been built and planted fairly late. We've had a very late season here. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is I wanted to make use of the heat that we do get in our very short summer season. We have a hot season here, generally speaking, but especially this year with our polar vortex effect and late spring with a lot of rain and cold temperatures through June and July, and some of the coldest on record for July, I believe. One of the reasons for doing these raised beds is to actually bank heat. We create kind of a thermal mass kind of effect, so these beds will get warmer faster in the springtime, and while they will cool down faster in the fall time than the surrounding areas, it isn't really the ground getting cold or freezing that ends the garden season. It's actually the frost. So having raised beds only really extends the season around here. So a front yard edible naturescape. So I have edible in brackets. That's because that's kind of the direction that I've taken with my project here. It certainly isn't this. You could plant any kind of plant, whatever you wish to grow, whether it be kind of your regular kind of showcase domestic varieties of flowers or what have you, or exotic, or if you want to go the indigenous or the native prairie or native plant route, you can do that as well. So I got this this method from this gentleman here, Steph Holzer. He's a permaculture and agroecologist from Austria. He did a presentation or workshop in Gimli, Manitoba back in May, and I attended that. And what he was doing was some very, very large-scale earthwork and maneuvering with 3 big caterpillars or excavators and a bulldozer, turning basically flat ground into large terraces and waterways and this kind of thing. And so kind of the philosophy, I guess, is that creating sort of a place for water, for one thing, so that you're incorporating water into the design, and also increasing the diversity of topography and climate, microclimate potential, microclimate areas in your garden. You increase the diversity of things that you can grow with less work, kind of thing. So hugelkultur is the type of raised bed that I have created here, and it is a composting process employing raised bed plants constructed on top of decaying wood debris and other compostable biomass materials. That can even include old textiles like jeans and sweaters, grass, newspaper, cardboard, you name it. So it's kind of a adaptation, or kind of going a few steps further from the lasagna gardening method that some people might be familiar with. The process helps to improve soil fertility, water retention, and soil warming that benefits plant growth on or near such mounds. And so here's kind of a cross-section of what these mounds sort of look like. Here you can see the trenches being dug and large logs and sticks and materials being put in there. And then we have turf with the grass face down, and then a humus layer. And so this is precisely what I've done in my front yard. I've made 3 of these. However, I've orientated them differently than what's shown here. I've orientated them so that they have a south side and a north side, and the sun actually runs from the eastern extreme of one of these rows to the western extreme. So the south side, of course, is a lot more arid and dry, and the north side is a lot more shaded and moist. So there's benefit and pros and cons to doing it, to lining these up either way, and we can talk about that in a little bit. Here's an example of some larger, like a larger operation here, where they're making some very large hugelkultur raised beds, and these can be made over many meters high, and can actually take on significant changes to the landscape. But Sepp Holzer, as opposed to other people kind of in his permaculture field, permaculture meaning permanent agriculture, believes that the use of heavy equipment is appropriate, especially in instances where the landscape has been degraded by heavy equipment. So for instance, in the prairies, we have, that was a little early for that one, so in the prairies we have a landscape that is dominated by monoculture, and it has been, was flat to begin with and was graded, and all the wetlands, 99 or so percent of the wetlands filled, and drainage channels put in to get the water off the land as quickly as possible. The Sepp Holzer model is the opposite. You wanted to keep the water on the land. And so with the second flood of 300 years in the last 3 years here in Brandon, it seems more and more apparent that that's an important thing to do. So I've kind of incorporated that into this model as well, just in a kind of a very showcasey kind of way. So this is kind of a silly picture of kind of what, it's not quite like that, but it is kind of similar. You can't get away with stacking soil too high in a climatic zone such as the ones in the prairies, because it just gets too hot and arid in the summertime. So the top layers here would just dry out, and it looks like it would be you'd have a real heck of a time to keep water on there. So that would be more of a temperate rainforest kind of a climate that you could get away with stacking soil like that. So here is kind of the lay of the land of my my little front yard. I am using a very quite a small stretch of land. So we're only talking about 25 meters long, or even 20 meters long by about 6 meters across. Actually, 15 meters long by 6 meters across. And so by mounding the soil like this, I've increased that surface area and allowed for a lot more places to plant trees. Now, or plant vegetables. If I go up, I can find my cursor here. So here's my house. Again, here's where I'm sitting, right about here. I got a downspout that comes out and enters the back of the garden, which was originally 2 big troughs where I plant my corn in, and I had the intention of extending that downspout this way to get it through those troughs, but never actually got around to it, and those channels got really, really inundated with 2 months of rain, so my corn didn't really like that very much. But now I have a nice grade, and the water comes down here when there is a really heavy rain event and goes around all my garden and ends up in a low spot that I put down at the bottom of the yard. And so this low spot I have just thought about. I haven't actually installed this piece of the yard, and I'll show you what that looks like right away. But it will eventually be kind of like the wetlands, and that'll be where I'll have a real low kind of sunken garden, so the opposite of these raised gardens. That's where I'll be planting mint and wild irises, swamp milkweed, and other native plants. So I'm mixing native plants in with the vegetable plants somewhat sporadically, and I kind of like that effect. So what I'll do now is take you on a little tour of the garden, and if you want to just extend your viewing window by clicking and dragging on the bottom right-hand tab, you should be able to expand that and make it big enough to see where we're going here. Okay, you ready? Here we go. So I'm turning the computer around, and I'm going to put us on speakerphone so I can, oh, I'm already on speakerphone. So this is the back. We're viewing the back of the garden here. Here's the corn rows that I was mentioning. I had them in troughs so that I could bury them nice and deep, so that once they started to grow up and I started to see the first nodes, and if you look back here, you can see that little kind of a node down at the ground level. That's where another set of roots can come out. At all those nodes, another set of roots is possible. So I've since filled them in, and so they have double the roots that they would normally have. Now my corn is quite small, and a couple of them really didn't like the stress of being flooded out, and just actually went right into a cob. So there is a very, very tiny corn plant that is strictly concerned with producing one itty-bitty tiny little cob. Kind of sad. So coming around to the side of the garden here, we're looking at it from the east, and you'll see that what looks like a lot of flowers, possibly a lot of weeds, and a lot of people think that I'm just really, really neglectful, but those are actually my mixed salad greens. So what I am showing you here are intentional plants. This is arugula with the white flowers, mizuna with the yellow flowers, and these little guys here are actually shepherd's purse. I'm going to have some Mexican sunflowers. It's too bad this presentation wasn't a week later. I'd have those flowers out by then, I suspect. They're just starting to bud. So I have a mixture of kind of exotic plants, such as even the bananas that you see here, right next to native prairie plants, such as the mullein that you see here. So from there, I have, this is the front of that raised bed. I have a row of brassicas, broccoli and kale and red cabbage, and behind that I have eggplants that are unfortunately just getting their flowers on now. It's a little bit late in the season, but a combination of factors that I just have to accept. And behind there, up on top of this bed, I have chili peppers. I have Zapotec tomatoes. That's an Aztec variety of tomatoes. And a host of these greens that I've mowed down several times, filled many grocery bags full of delicious mustardy, nutty flavored greens. So arugula, mizuna, and mustard is a really nice mix. And I even have some peanuts growing in here, which I'm just hoping to just get to experience kind of how that looks. If you see those divided leaves there, those are the peanut plants. So it's like I say, an edible naturescape. something that I get a lot out of. Not just being able to kind of forage for food. I've always enjoyed berry picking and mushroom picking, and so to kind of have to root around and find the basil plant that's hiding underneath or behind the eggplant kind of is an exciting concept to me. And I'll find a plant or find a fruiting something fruiting that I didn't even really realize was there. But something that I really enjoy is the activity in this garden. And when I was first building this garden, the activity was seemed to be pretty limited to just a whole pile of mosquitoes and black flies. But now I have so many different kinds of bees and wasps, and I can't really be sure to tell the difference. There's over 200 varieties of bees and wasps, and I've just found out recently that the distinction between the two is something that you really need to know to look for in order to be able to point out. But I have noticed wasps taking insect pests off of my cabbage plants, like cabbage worms, and I've seen more bees in here with all these little flowers than I could have possibly hoped for. So the activity is quite great. I have zucchinis down here, yellow zucchinis on the side. I have cantaloupes and watermelons mixed in with rainbow chard all along here. And then spinning around, I hope I'm not making anybody too dizzy, I have cucumbers just coming up and starting to climb the trellising. On the back side is my middle raised bed. I have some dinosaur kale, tomatillos, some tobacco, which can be cured and turned into something to smoke, but is also a great can be made into a great insecticide. And then here I have a bit more of this mizuna, more cabbage, and a plethora of other kind of plants mixed in, including echinacea, purple coneflower back here, which is a native source seed variety, nasturtiums, daikon radishes, which I'm looking forward to using as kind of the main aerator next to worms. I don't plan on tilling these beds. And what I've done instead of ripping plants out is just cutting them right down, because I want that root mass to stay in the ground to help to hold these land formations together. I have some nice tulsi, which is a holy basil, a very beautiful smelling thing. I wish I could get that smell to you folks at your computers. Unfortunately, that technology has not been developed. The 3D printer is out yet, but the smell printer I don't think has really made the same leaps and bounds. We've got some rosemary there. And then over to this side I have beets that are hoping to get a little bit more light. So it's basically, my tactic was plant as much stuff as I can plant, and then once it comes up, then start to thin it out. So I've already removed a few squash plants, a few zucchini plants that there obviously wasn't room for. I'll probably remove a few more, but they also serve to cool the soil down, so I don't want to remove something unless there's something that's going to fill that space, because every bit of black soil, especially on the south side, is very prone to drying up. So you've seen I've started to kind of mulch. I'm not able to produce the amount of grass that I need on my own lawn here, so I'll probably have to import something. I've used some wood chips as well. But my real goal was to just kind of cover everything with these edible greens like mizuna here. So mizuna's got that nice feathered leaf. It's almost like a bok choy tasting green. I'd love to munch that, but that would be unprofessional. And then down on this side, I got, again, more brassicas. So what I've missed out on in terms of production of peppers, tomatoes, and somewhat to some degree squash, I seem to be making up for with the production of cold weather crops, the cruciferous crops. This is all cheddar cauliflower, so it's an orange cauliflower. Swiss chard, got some rhubarb chard here. Tomatoes, as you can see, they're just kind of flowering. They're starting to set some fruit. They're quite late. I have some red Russian kale here, some lacinato kale, some more tobacco, some pepper plants, all interspersed with holy basil. And what looks like bare soil on the surface is actually a plethora of little baby carrots. So they're just putting their true leaves out now. And I'm hoping that I'll have some decent-sized carrots by the end of September. A lot of the stuff I have in my garden is frost tolerant, so the brassicas will continue to grow after that first hard frost. Some of them will even continue well into October, even after temperatures drop significantly. I was astounded by the quality and flavor of the arugula in my garden, even after the temperature dropped to -18 last year. So there's some amazing hardiness, and that I think is kind of key when gardening in a place where the first killing frost might come the beginning of September. It might not come till the end of September. And quite often September is a beautiful month, so it's nice to have a lot of different things in the garden. There's one of the garden's top predators there, the daddy longlegs. And then in front here, this is what I have not finished yet. Basically all this is just kind of a holding tank for a bunch of native prairie plants, purple prairie coneflower, wild bergamot, pussy toes, Joe pieweed, which is flowering, believe it or not, it's a tiny little guy, and a swamp milkweed, the wild irises, some echinacea, and sweetgrass. So eventually this will all be turned into a nice, big, long sunken garden, but that won't happen for another couple of weeks yet. So just to kind of give you a tour, and now what I'll do, I'll sit back down and I will play you a video of how these gardens are created. And I hope that you've been able to see all of that and not just my screensaver, which would have been a disaster. Okay, so I'll shrink myself here and get this video queued up. Okay, here we are. Looking at something called a hugelkultur raised bed. This is a form of raised bed, and basically what it is it's a raised bed technique that actually incorporates the use of large fiber objects like oops, got some buffering happening here. I'll close my my window here. Sorry about that. Hopefully this starts back up here. Well, this is, let's see if we can try this again here. So I want to just say thanks to WCG TV for filming this and filming the Garden Network workshops on a regular basis. It really helped me huge. Thanks so much, Andrea, for helping me put this together. And here, hopefully we can get this video out here. Hugelkultur raised bed. This is a form of raised bed. Basically what it is it's a raised bed technique that actually incorporates the use of large fiber objects like darn, okay, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. I'm going to turn off the webcam. Maybe that will help. And I think I'll close that. And we'll try this again here. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I think this should work now. We're looking at something called a hugelkultur raised bed. This is a form of raised bed. Basically what it is it's a raised bed technique that actually incorporates the use of, I hope you're able to hear this, of large fiber objects like Okay. I was able to swatch this before. I will, okay, sorry about this, folks.
Are the videos available online somewhere that we could view them afterwards?
Yeah, I have them on Dropbox, and I can share that link. Basically, it's the video would have been too long to have shown in its entirety anyways. We have basically 2 hours of footage that we edited out yesterday to make half an hour of footage. So it's unfortunate that that now, when I have an audience, I'm having trouble playing it. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but yeah, I think if I can maybe close a few things here, and well, I guess we can't really just wait forever for this. So instead, maybe what I'll do is kind of describe the methods used here a little bit more. So I guess you can probably still see me, so I might as well get this crown off my face. So what I did to create these mounds was, first off, I dug down into the soil, into the mineral soil. I was lucky enough to have a front yard that has a significant portion of topsoil still on it. So this yard is, its house was built in the 1890s, and I don't think the topsoil was ever removed, whereas a lot of new development areas, the topsoil is kind of mined and taken to sold to landscape companies and replaced with about a 5-inch skiff of soil that that is just enough to grow sod. So if you decide to put a garden in, you might be a little miffed by what you see, and hopefully hopefully you're able to get some soil in to work with. In my case, I had a foot of topsoil. Underneath that, I had a nice hard-packed kind of clay substrate, which I dug down to, carved out basically the size of the garden's worth width-wise in trenches, removed the sod, put that in one pile, removed the soil, put that in another pile, and then chipped into the mineral soil to make even a trough into that hard-packed clay. That's when I incorporated the logs and sticks to make that biomass. And after incorporating the logs and the sticks, I then threw topsoil on top of that, and then covered that with the upside down sod. So I put the sod upside down so it doesn't have quite as good a chance of turning around. And from there, I added more topsoil that I had available to me because of being able to dig down deep trenches in between the beds. So basically where I walk and where the water channel is very, very little topsoil. So I figured why have topsoil where the paths are going to be. However, sorry, garbage truck is going by. However, when the rain happens, I would have a problem getting around in my garden if all those paths were full of water. So that's where I would either use some riprap, some large kind of fist-sized rocks, or would install some walking platforms, some walking boards to kind of get around in between them. But I haven't got to that point yet. So I guess with this kind of happening the way it is, I'll just so bizarre. I guess just having both programs running at once I haven't given my computer enough space to work properly. So instead, I will just close that, and we will continue with the tour, the live tour. Okay, so I got the cam back on here, and we'll go for a bit of a walkabout. So Here I have this lilac to the side of me. This was very, very high and blotted out a lot of my garden. As you can see, it's incredibly sparse. That's because I've just hacked it down to a reasonable level. I still have some fine tuning to do, definitely, but the amount of light that's come in from the west side is remarkable. It's really helped to invigorate the plant growth. And I also happened to lose a giant maple that took up that whole big space in the sky there, and so that let a lot more light into the garden. But coming around here, so you'll see when I go down here, that plastic edging. Now that's the original soil level, and so as you can see, we're down quite low. That is that's where the soil was. So these are the trenches here. They're down about a foot beneath, or about 10 inches or so beneath the soil level. And so basically this mound was originally dug quite a bit deeper than that trench. And this mound, that mound, and the one over there were all dug out. The sod was put in a pile. The sticks and logs are put in, and I can show you kind of what kind of materials I was utilizing. I have a whole bunch left because my recent lilac massacre happened subsequent to installing these beds, but this is a whole bunch more material. So this would be enough to put a bed in. I could probably use all of these branches and sticks and all of those logs back there to do my next big project, which is to put a lengthwise north to south bed in along this strip here. And so basically what you do, you dig down into the mineral layer, and if you dig a nice trench in the mineral layer, what you end up with is a kind of a water holding kind of pocket. And so when you fill something like that up with those big logs, it keeps them very moist, and I would recommend putting any large kind of pieces of wood like that upright, so that even when that moisture retention area is kind of dry, the cut ends at the bottom will bring the moisture up through the logs. And basically, what we're trying to do is encourage that material to decompose, and sorry, I'm speaking a little bit quietly here. So, and then what we end up with is a nice fibrous kind of spongy mat underneath the soil. So if it wasn't for all of that material in these beds, they would be, especially in our climate, and it's especially in front of this big reflective, heat-sinking and radiating brick wall, it would be very hard to grow anything as vertically as I have attempted to do. But with all that fibrous material, year after year, these beds will get better and better and better. Not only does it hold moisture, it also provides habitat for an enormous microbial community. So there's a whole lot of decomposition happening, lots of food for all of our decomposers and worms and insects. So we're creating a kind of diversity from the bottom up, from the back end of the spectrum with that. While at the same time, I'll be leaving leaves on top of the soil in the fall time and covering it with a nice healthy mulch. So so basically, what you need to do something like what I've done in the video that I will provide the link for, I've used something called a mattock extensively. And that is like a heavy-ended hoe or kind of like a sideways axe, it allows you to work the soil without breaking your back. Shovels are something that you really okay. Sorry, just going to get this off here. shovels are something you really only ever see used for gardening kind of in the West. I've never seen a video of farmers in Uganda or in Asia or in other parts of the world using a spade or a shovel. It's always the mattock, the heavy-ended hoe, and that's what I cut the sod with. You'll see a demonstration of that sod being cut with that implement in the video. You can basically just kind of scalp like beaver pelt sized pieces of sod with that. And the other implement is the walking fork, which is a large, heavy, two-handled U-shaped bar that has about 6 10-inch spikes at the bottom that you insert into the ground and step your weight on it, wiggle back and forth, and pull back. And so that basically takes the need for the back-breaking spade or shovel out of the equation. The nice thing about these beds is it really enables the gardener to start seeing his or her yard as, or his or her own space as the resource for or the I guess I'll form this thought a little bit better. So it enables the gardener to utilize the resources in one's own property to create, you know, a growing mecca. So I could have ended up going to the landfill with about 5 loads of branches in the back of a pickup truck, but instead I have, you know, a whole bunch more topography and biomass in my garden, and something that I would look forward to trying out, if not for any other reason than the novelty of it, burying old denim and wool and cottons in my the next garden that I build. Of course, you want to anything like that can cause an impermeable kind of a layer. You'd want to kind of shred up so you're not inhibiting the root growth. But yeah, it's kind of a way of taking things that normally you'd have to remove from your site and incorporating them and composting them in a way that just kind of improves the look of the green space. So besides that, I guess I'll turn things to allow people to ask some questions if there's any questions out there. Jolene?
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you have 2 options. You can click on the little button of a hand, and then I'll unmute your microphone, and you can ask Blake here a question, or you can type it into the chat question box, the little message box down there, and I can ask it for you. But so I'll give you a moment to.
Sure, and I will just mention, like, I spent myself and the technician from WCG-TV. It's really unfortunate I wasn't able to show the footage because we have prepared a really kind of in-depth half hour of right from square one of actually removing the sod right down to putting the topsoil on, adding the mushroom manure and seeding it, and then mulching it. So like from basic front yard garden to planted hugelkultur mound will be available as well. And something I'll just mention because I just thought of it, whenever you are burying live vegetation or undecomposed material, such as a cover crop or sod, you always need to add nitrogen because you're basically asking the bacterial community to bloom and to reproduce rapidly. And when bacteria reproduce, they need to build all these new cells, all their new all the new little bacterial bodies, which takes a lot of protein, which requires a lot of nitrogen. So initially, when you turn a bunch of sod into your garden will go into a nitrogen deficit. And so you actually need to feed that to help with that bacterial growth, to aid in the breaking down of those materials, and also, of course, to ensure that the plants that you do have in there are able to receive what they need as well. So that was an answer to a question that was not asked, but now I'm ready.
That's okay. It's a very important concept to understand, even when using immature compost as well. If you did opt for a composting system to add immature compost, it'll also deplete nitrogen. We do have a question from Ashley Keep from Manitoba Conservation and Water Stewardship, and she's asking, how often do you replace the material under the beds?
Oh, well, I don't think you ever replace the material. And saying that, I guess I'm also kind of realizing that I've never actually thought of that. Because, like, basically everything that you've added, the finished point of, like, even something the size of tree trunks, the end product is humus, and it won't break down any further than that, provided there is no significant erosion events. That material will always remain in your garden. However, as those materials break down, and I have witnessed this in my garden this year, there will be a bit of a sinking because the pore space will start to kind of break down, and the gardens will kind of start to sit a little bit closer to the ground. But you won't ever need to replace any of the materials in there. However, unless you are allowing a certain amount of that biomass that's growing on the top to remain and decompose and break down, then you will need to add some compost. Now, I plan on never removing root systems from the garden except for weeds, and B, always leaving a really nice top dressing of leaves and grass clippings and that in the spring, or pardon me, in the fall. But also, I look forward to planting lots of crops constantly in rotation, and allowing a lot of it to kind of return back to the earth. So I'm using kind of a zero-till program, or I'm planning on using a zero-till program. However, I might need to disturb the soil a little bit in the spring because I wasn't able to landscape it quite as exactly as I would have liked to have, because there were so many clots of cloats or gobs of sod. But yeah, I don't think you ever really need to replace the biomass. You may have to add nutrients.
Would you ever like put on the wooded material on top and start going higher, or no?
I suppose you could, but that would, I mean, yeah, you certainly could. You would just basically need to, any amount of height you would need to you multiply with the same kind of ratio of width kind of thing. And I think the grade is, I think 1 high to 2 wide kind of thing. So you would kind of want to stick with that grade. You wouldn't want to just keep going high. I showed that video, or that picture, pardon me, of the woman. Looked like she was shopping down 2 aisles in a grocery store, but they were the hugelculture beds. And you can go really high in a temperate zone, but then in that case you would be limited by water erosion from rainstorms and that kind of thing. So here I can't go very high. I've made these beds very flat, just because I know that the summers are really, really hot, and I won't get away with asking the water to stay, up so high. The more organic material you have, of course, the more kind of a wicking effect from the ground your beds will have, and you'll be able to draw moisture up from deep down into that furrow, or into that gully that you've dug into the mineral soil layer. So water will kind of tend to pool there, and then that organic material will be able to kind of bring it up to where your plant roots can get at it. Does that answer that question, Jay?
Yeah. If anyone else has some questions that come in, I'll ask one of my own in the meantime. And that's for a lot of community gardens. You see a lot of raised beds or containerized beds. Would you recommend this system as an alternative option for that, and what would be the benefit of that?
I think that that's something that has definitely been on my mind, and I'm very excited about the potential of that. I think that to get the foot in the door with community gardens, I think one of the things that, that is kind of the first kind of oppositionary kind of response to the idea of a community garden is that they look messy, or that, people won't take care of them, or they'll look unsightly and this and that. And I think that kind of the foot in the door has been with these neatly constructed raised beds, nice, neat, uniform boxes lined up in a regimented fashion, and mowed and trimmed around routinely to help kind of make gardening in urban and public spaces okay. And while I do recognize, the need to have a kind of a defined boundary between where you can run and walk and kick your soccer ball and walk your dog, and where somebody is growing vegetables, I think that is important. But that can be done with fencing or with just some kind of landscaping or other things. It doesn't necessarily need to be wooden boxes. I would love to see these sorts of earthen mound gardening styles coming into the urban naturescape or the urban landscape, and especially at places like schools, places where people are maybe a little bit more allowed to kind of experiment and create new things and see how things go. So I think in a schoolyard kind of setting, I think these would be really, really great. Also at like kind of discovery centers or natural museum or that kind of an area, I think would be a really great kind of first step for these sorts of things. They have started to put them in some cities and some towns in Europe and some other parts of the world. And you can go really big with them. And so when you start to stack material higher and higher, there comes a greater need for stability. And so the creators of this technique also use like natural staples made out of just a tree branch that has that's being cut to look like a stake with a drop with a side stick coming off the side, so that when you turn it upside down and hammer it into the ground, that side stem actually acts like kind of a barb and hooks the material and holds laterally lined up branches and stems to kind of make some solid protection from erosion and that. And that's where you can start to see these turning into actual hills covered in raspberries and fruit trees and that kind of thing can actually be walked on. So there is, yes, there is, I think there is definitely a potential. And the other thing about this is it incorporates so much kind of recycling and composting with the food production and with ecology. It's really tied into ecology and to creating relationships and creating diversity in nature and in the human and natural interaction. So I think there's a lot of potential, and it's very cheap. You don't have to buy thousands of dollars of treated 4x4, pieces of wood or really, really, really expensive cedar or anything like that. So, yeah, I think the potential is there.
Okay. We got one question here from Rick at the Meeting House in Ontario, and he's asking, what nitrogen sources are you using in the initial stages? Was that the mushroom manure? And what about regular incorporation of legumes in your landscape to provide sustainable nitrogen?
Definitely. I have planted beans fairly sporadically throughout my garden. I have dragon tongue beans everywhere, and they're just starting to fruit now. But yeah, I think he's absolutely right. Putting pulse, intermixing the pulse crops in, whether those are ones that you are going to consume, or ones that are just kind of there to act as a pollination, an area for pollinators to get nectar and to attract them to your garden. So I think that I've kind of underrepresented the legumes in my garden this year, certainly in terms of diversity. But for instance, in my little natural garden up at the front, or my little holding tank for my my native plants, I have purple prairie clover That would be an example of a plant, and the pussy toes is also a leguminous plant that are both native to the prairies that I would look forward to planting in the garden to not just encourage the native plants, but also to provide little nitrogen sources hither and thither. So I think that yeah, I think that's definitely important. These gardens, I really planted them quite hastily. I had a bunch of plants that were root bound and needed to go in. Some of them were free. Some of them I'd had in my patio for a very long time, and then kind of just threw seeds at it. So in next year, I'll definitely be incorporating a lot more legumes, and I look forward to planting this week actually peas and broad beans, and I'm curious as to whether or not I can plant, between now and August 10th and actually get a crop of peas and fava beans in Brandon, in Manitoba. They are more frost tolerant than a lot of than the other varieties of beans, so we shall see. But yeah, good question. And when I did plant, when I did add the sod and then put the topsoil on, I incorporated that mushroom manure so that there would be enough nitrogen there. And since that time, I have gone over it a couple of times with fish emulsion, and given it a shot of fish emulsion a few times. And also I've been making compost tea and giving a foliar application and root application to kind of encourage the decomposition process, and also to make sure that my plants are getting enough nitrogen and other nutrients.
Okay, well, we have a few minutes here to wrap it up, and we do have one more question. It's also a similar question that I was thinking about. You obviously have an incredible amount of diversity in your garden, and we were just wondering where you were able to find these plants, and where can we get more information on what grows well together, and just do you have any general resources on this type of gardening to improve our soil ecology and plant ecology?
Right. Yeah. Well, I actually got a lot of my starter plants. I try to focus as much as I can. Like the corn is a Mandan Bride and a Northern Flint, so those are both indigenous varieties. I try to incorporate heritage varieties as much as possible, and I get seed from Prairie Garden Seeds in Saskatchewan and Heritage Harvest Seeds in Manitoba, and have also got them at Mandy's Greenhouse, who is unfortunately retiring and letting the seed-saving wing of her production go. But I get started plants from Room to Grow Greenhouse, David Neufeld down in Boissevain, as well as Prairie Originals, Shirley Froelich out in Tinsdale, Manitoba. And those are all great resources for, well, certainly the online catalog of Heritage Harvest is quite incredible. It's got pictures of just about everything they grow, and I think for everybody's area it'll be different. For incorporating an indigenous naturescape, you'll have to look at what plants. First of all, what plants are native to your area, what plants are endangered, and definitely try to focus on them, and then of course what plants will grow in your kind of microclimate. So are you shaded, are you full sun, that kind of a thing. In terms of this hugoculture method, the video, which I will share the link to the Sky Cloud or the Dropbox, it very clearly demonstrates the construction process. So and basically everything you find on, or most of what you find on the internet in terms of the directions will be pretty similar. But Sepp Holzer Agroecology, or permaculture, and then the group that he created, which is called PermaVita, and PermaVita, PermaVitae, PermaVitae. They go all around the world and install. They'll turn deserts into very productive aquaponic, lake systems, and turn like up in Gimli where we were. It was super heavy clay soil with a top acidic layer that couldn't grow anything, and they've basically turned that into what will become a incredibly highly productive area, and so that's a really cool group to kind of follow and to check out. In terms of other links to this kind of information, I'll get some actual links together for some videos and some things that I think might be helpful, and provide them to you.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks everyone for participating in this webinar, and also thanks for your questions. And the webinar has been recorded, so it will be available on the Compost Council of Canada website. And if Danielle, you have some closing words as well?
No, just thank you so much to everybody for joining us, and thank you so much, Blake, for the incredibly personal presentation that was done, and for showing us basically your own home garden. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I look forward to supplying you with the video of its creation.
Yes, excellent. Okay.
Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you again next month.
Yes.
Bye-bye.